Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday. So my name is Marianne. I'm the Associate Director of Dakshin. Before we start the Environmental Education Program session, I just quickly wanted to say that, so we turned 13 on Thursday, on the 22nd. And so we thought it would be nice to kind of interact with a lot of the people that have been following us on social media and who are generally interested in the work that we do. So I'm sure I don't have to say this because that's how you all found out about the open day. But Dakshin is essentially a marine conservation organization that works very closely with fishing communities around different coastal states in India, but also in the Lakshadweep Islands and in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. And we work with them on a range of different issues that are connected to their own well-being. So education and health, things like that, but also on environmental issues such as fisheries management, managing beaches and coastal spaces, engaging with environmental law, or protecting marine species like turtles, for instance. And so this kind of work is segregated into the different programs that, that you've seen that we have. And that you will be interacting with the different teams over the course of today. So, please stick around for as many sessions as you'd like to join, or come in and go out depending on what you're most interested to hear about. Our sessions are not structured the same way. Like every team has chosen to engage with y'all the way that they feel the most comfortable doing. So it'll all be a little bit different, but there will always be time for question answers in all of the sessions. So we'll first answer the questions that you gave when filling out the form, and then we'll open it up to any new questions that you might have given time. So we're a little bit late, so we will go on the EE session will extend for 10 minutes extra. And so we'll be a little bit 10 minutes behind on most of our sessions today, and then we'll catch up in the lunch break, hopefully. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll hand over to Karishma from the Environmental Education Program.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Hey everyone, good morning and welcome to Environment Education, the Environment Education Program session at A Day with Dakshin. Before we start anything, I want to introduce you to the team. And we are 5 of us who comprise the Environmental Education Program. Momita Bhomik and Aplonia Topno are our teachers from the Andaman. We work together in the Islands of Wisdom project. Aruna Manjunath is our program officer, and Naveen Nambutri is our program head. And as you may have seen on social media, these are our profiles and this is what we do. And you will hear more about it as the session progresses. So I won't spend too much time on individual introductions right now, but I'd much rather tell you about what we do as a team. So our work is coming to you from largely largely a space in the Andamans right now, but we do have a lot of things that we engage with, and this is all of us saying to you a big welcome from our classroom in Wandoor. So a bit about the environmental education program is that from the beginning, it started off as developing teaching learning materials for coastal regions in and around Karnataka. But then the effort became a lot more solidified when we started interacting with the Directorate of Education in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, when we developed a dedicated environmental education curriculum for classes 6 to 8 called Treasured Islands. And the book since 2014 has been in the process of being accepted as a compulsory curriculum for environmental education in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And we really hope that happens soon. Apart from this, we also work under a grant from the Wipro Foundation. It was initially called the Applying Thought in Schools grant, but and this has been happening since 2017. And this is where we have the classroom in Wandoor in the South Andaman since 2017, where we help students from elementary school in an after-school sort of format with foundational literacy, numeracy, and some school support as well. And we like to also give them an insight into what the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are about through place-based education. And so our work can largely be divided into three main categories. So we have the Learning Center at in the Andamans, which takes like a lion's share of our work. We have school engagement through the Treasured Islands curriculum, like I talked about in previously, and we do outreach in a variety of ways. So I want to start with talking about school engagement, since it is about formal education, and it is what is going to happen hopefully in the public school network. So Treasured Islands is the curriculum in environmental education that supports both teachers and students. Book that's full of stories, activities, role play, like information resources for field observations and field visits and things like that. And students get a workbook in which they can do these activities. And overall, the objective is to build critical literacy in the learners in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and to connect the students back to the place that they are from. So this is very briefly about Treasured Islands. We can talk about it more in question answer. The next thing that I do want to talk to you about is our Learning Center, which, like I said, takes up a chunk of our engagement and we work currently under a Wipro Foundation grant. And it's been running since 2017. Our main work is foundational literacy and numeracy to make sure that students are able to absorb and keep up with the grade level material that is given to them through schools. And finally, we also do place-based education, like I said, getting them more connected to the Andamans where they are from. So sorry, just a second, yeah. And so this is very pre-pandemic times. This was 2019, these photographs are from where Momita, as you see on the left, is reading a storybook to a bunch of students who are with puppets. And because in pre-pandemic times, we had a classroom up and running, it was a physical classroom. They're all, huddling around a storybook. And on the right, you see Apollonia with younger children, and she is working on that, what she's using a resource in a coastal village. It's like a storybook, it's a picture book, to help them complete some school work. So like this is the foundational education bit that's happening through place-based education. So we also support our community teachers. So the students become one part of our work, but our community teachers, who we hope to bring into this, the variety of ways in which to teach something. That's how we support community teachers, and this is our space in which it happens. And finally, like I said, we also do outreach through a variety of workshops and sessions. So here what you do see is a couple of workshops that we ran interprogrammatically in a brief spell of time that we got to work with children, even while sort of the pandemic was, it was a problem, yes, in the Andamans, but we did get a brief 3 weeks in which certain guidelines came into force that allowed learning spaces to work in the Andamans. And so these children came out with us into the open to do a birding workshop and a waste management workshop. And this we did in collaboration with our community well-being and environment program. And finally, a really important component of what we do is our internships. And these are some of the things that our internships do produce. So we have curriculum and content reviews, we have material development, and you can see examples of our flashcards on the slide here. And these flashcards are being developed specifically for the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We also are working on a number of reviews of literature and materials that are already, interventions that are already being conducted. One of the key pieces of our foundational literacy and numeracy efforts is the Annual Status of Education Report, ASAR, which kind of tries to measure students' literacy, like reading and mathematics levels, in a very independent of grade and independent of school kind of way. And we're hoping to use the same tool that ASAR uses to assess our students as well. And some of our interns are working on that. Again, we can do more clarification during Q&A. Finally, just to quickly wrap up the presentation itself, we do have a lot of collaborations and partnerships that we keep looking forward to because our work doesn't just have roots in environmental education, which is nature-based and things like that, but we also have a lot of goals in the foundational literacy and numeracy space. So we want to collaborate with as many organizations with experience in these domains. And we're always looking for collaborations and partnerships. Of course, the pandemic has slowed down a lot of these efforts, but the idea is to keep invitations open and to make sure that we have people partnering with us in the near future. And finally, one of the most important things that you may be seeing on our social media is we're looking for more people to join our team. And we are looking for a senior research assistant to join the education program. And if you follow us on social media, you will also be seeing this. And there'll be links in the chat towards the end of this session. And so if you know anyone or if you yourself are interested, do write to us. All the links will be put in chat. So I also, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that a part of our outreach also involves our field staff. So our field staff who work with us in the Andaman Islands, they lead a bunch of our workshops. So the birding workshop that you can see here is being led by someone who's a local from the Andamans, and he is part of our Dakshin staff, and he makes sure that he connects at a very personal and again place-based level with our learners. So yes, this is the introduction, and I really want to move into the next bit, which is we're trying to give you
I think Karishma froze.
I suspect we've lost Karishma, so I'm just going to quickly take over. Hi, I'm Aruna. What we're trying to do is give you a glimpse. I'm just going to give this a couple of seconds.
A brief idea of what happens in.
We're going to give you a brief idea about what happens in our learning lab. So we're going to quickly run you through a series of lessons. I'm just going to share my screen.
Hey, Aruna, I think I'm able to do it. I'll just keep my video off though.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was a bit of a glitch. And so we're going to take you through a kind of storytelling session, like Aruna said, what we do with our students as well. So this is a story about Ghum Ghum, and she's a gharial. And a gharial is a very interesting looking creature, if you can see in this picture. So let's hear the story of what happens to Ghum Ghum. And we're going to be asking you some questions at the end. So remember to stay extremely attentive. And here we go.
Ghum Ghum Gharial's Glorious Adventure. Written by Aparna Kapoor. Illustrated by Rosh. Published by Pratham Books. Ghum Ghum was excited. She was going for her first swim.
Brop, Grum,
Said her family, who were excited too. Ghum Ghum's snout touched the water and whoosh! The river rushed all around her. Ghum Ghum paddled her feet and swished her tail. Look, Papa, I'm swimming. Look. Papa? Gum Gum looked in front and looked behind. She looked to the right and then to the left. Papa? She was alone. Her family had swum off without her. An otter floated past. Have you seen my family, Mr. Otter? Asked Gum Gum. No, but I've seen a lot of stars, said the otter. Would you like to see some? Maybe next time, thanks, said Gum Gum. Just then, roof, rap. It was her family. Gum Gum giggled happily and swam towards the sound. Suddenly, a dolphin leapt up in front of her. Do you know where my family is, Miss Dolphin? Asked Gum Gum. No, but I do know where the yummiest fish are, said the dolphin. Would you like to eat one? Maybe next time. Thanks, said Gum Gum. Just then, grab, grab. It was a family. Gum Gum giggled happily and swam towards the sound. A snail lay on a rock by the river bank. Can you help me find my family, Sister Snail? Asked Gum Gum. I can help you find a nice flat rock to sit on if you want, said the snail. Maybe next time, thanks, said Gum Gum. Just then, ruffed. It was her family. Gum Gum giggled happily and swam towards the sound. Gum Gum saw a big old gharial. Many little gharials swam around him. Have you seen my family, Grandpa Gharial? Gum Gum asked. Is your name Gum Gum? Asked the old gharial. Yes, I am Gum Gum, she said. Then I have seen your family. They have been looking everywhere for you, little one. Listen, there down the river. Can you hear them? Gum Gum listened. All the other little gharials listened too. Just then, from up the river, Krab Gum, Kraft Gum, Gum, Gum. It was her family, and they weren't very far off. Gum Gum giggled and swam towards the sound. Soon, Gum Gum reached a sandbank. She crawled onto it, tired from all her swimming. Gum Gum, said a voice. Papa! A large, dark shape came towards her. Papa! Papa bent down and lovingly nudged Gum Gum. Welcome home, Gum Gum, said Papa. Where did you go off to? I went on a glorious adventure, said Gum Gum, giggling. And tomorrow I want to go again. Gum Gum lives by the great river Ganga.
So at this point, we're going to take a pause and I'm going to ask some of you to raise your hands. Of course, so someone, Aruna or Pragya, you'll have to tell me who's raising hands because you're going to do a little bit of an activity very similar to what we would do in our classroom after we have told a story like this. So the activity is that you have to spot the animals on this page that Gum Gum met. when she was, going around looking for her family. So what all did you see? If anyone's raising their hand, maybe Aruna and Pragya, if you could unmute them. I think there are some people.
Tanya has raised her hand. I'm trying to find Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya.
Yeah.
So the baby Ghum Ghum, she saw otter and
Just say one. Thank you. Sorry. Just say one. Thank you so much.
Okay.
No problem. No problem. I didn't specify. That's something that I should have done. Please, could you just share one name? Whoever's
Okay.
next. One more participant.
Anu, she's raised her hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Anu.
Yes, I am going to go with the dolphin.
Thank you so much. Who's next?
Akanksha, could you unmute yourself?
Yeah, old gharial.
Okay. Do we see an old gharial on this page? Okay, I'm going to give you one more try. Try here. Is there anyone that Ghum Ghum met from here?
Yeah.
Or any of the animals that you can recognize from this page?
Buffalo.
Thank you so much. Okay. Can we have two more people who could try guessing what animals they see on the pages now? Now forget that whether Ghum Ghum met them or didn't. So what other animals do you see?
So it is the snail on the rock.
You can see a snail on the rock?
Yeah.
Super, thank you. And one more person, please.
Nishant, could you unmute yourself?
Sorry, can you hear me? I was talking about snail only. Sorry.
Oh, that's great. No, that's absolutely fine. In fact, yesterday when we were looking at the book again, we just noticed that there's something over the tiger. What is it that's over the tiger's head?
Butterfly.
Yeah, there are butterflies in this picture too.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. And now, in fact, we're going to go from this to a different sort of activity again that we would do after we are done reading. So Aruna, I kind of hand over this to you, and I can, I've stopped sharing my screen.
Okay.
So,
thanks, Karishma. I know that some of you have raised your hand but did not get the chance to respond. So what is my background too noisy, Karishma?
No, go ahead.
No, not at all.
Okay. So I would suggest the ones who have raised your hands to continue raising your hand, because the next activity, you will get a chance to respond. I'm just going to share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so ideally we would do this on a board, we would sit around with the children, but this is what it is. So what we're going to do is we are going to play a game of spin wheel, and we're going to ask you questions about the story. Pragya, can you please prompt to me whoever raises their hand? So once we have the first participant, we can start.
Anyone interested in the activity, please raise your hand.
I think some of you who didn't get the chance to respond to the earlier, I think Nishad?
Yes.
Yeah, Nishad, you can unmute yourself. I'm going to spin the wheel.
Oh, okay. Just hold on, please.
Whatever question
Yeah, please.
arrow lands on, you will have to respond. So who is Ghum Ghum looking for?
For her family.
And specifically,
Uh,
who is she calling out to?
Papa.
Absolutely, fantastic. So I'm going to eliminate this question. I think we can take a few more. Does anyone else want to give a try?
Yeah.
Tanya, okay, are you ready to spin
Yeah.
the wheel?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. What is it going to be? What is it going to be? So your question is, what kind of an animal is Ghum Ghum?
Alligator or gharial?
Yes, absolutely. Which one's your answer?
Gharial.
Yeah, that's the correct one. I think we can take one more person.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have a third person?
Not yet. Anyone else who wants to give it a shot?
You've already read the questions. No one else?
Okay,
Pragya?
why don't I give it a shot? No, wait, we have someone. Smriti Anand.
We have Smriti. Hi, Smriti. Smriti is also one of our very enthusiastic interns. Smriti, shall I spin it?
Yeah.
Aha.
Oh, no.
What does Ghum Ghum eat for lunch? So this was in the last page where you had to identify the creatures. This is a bit tricky, but take a chance.
It was I'm forgetting it now.
Karishma, can you give us a hint?
It's also something someone offered her. Like there are a lot of them that someone in the story offered this to Ghum Ghum, but she said not now. Does Roshni
would you like to give it a shot?
Smriti, you can either respond or pass or ask for another clue.
I'll pass. I think Roshni wanted.
Okay, Roshni, do you want to respond to this? Roshni, you can unmute yourself. Yeah. Last question, let's finish strong.
I think I don't know, maybe we are not able to reach Roshni.
Okay, Karishma, do you
Wait, Roshni can't unmute, but Roshni can type in the chat. So Roshni, why don't you go ahead and type it out in the chat since you can type there.
Yeah, fish. Roshni says fish.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roshni. And I think that's the last one since we're running short of time, but this is one of the things we can use. So the story that we used is from Pratham Storyweaver. They have a ton of free resources and they're in different reading levels. Pragya will share the link to Storyweaver, and this game was designed in WordWall. So we have there's a lot of teaching and learning material for you to access. If you know children, I think these are two great size for you to have a look at. So now we come to the final bit of what we would do and how we would wrap up a session. But for this, can I request as many of you to, whoever can you please show us your beautiful faces, which means that you will have to come on video, and I'm going to slightly press the Dakshin folks to kindly show us your faces. Thanks. I'm going to give this another 15 seconds. I completely understand if you're uncomfortable. I'm really one of those people who keep my video closed. All right, so this is the most interesting part of today's work, and also the most interesting part of the lesson plan. What we absolutely love to do is give children homework, because we are that kind of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a teeny tiny little bit of a homework, and I request you to go back home and try this. But what you will have to do is turn off all the lights in the night today, if possible, and try this. I'm sure all of us have memories of making shadow puppets when there was no electricity. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make one animal, and please go back home. I mean, today, I'm sure you're already home, and switch off all your lights and use your flashlight and try it in the night. And if it is possible, if it is, kindly click a photograph and share it with us on our social media page. I think Pragya will be happy to share it in a bit. What animal do you think we're going to make? Any guesses? Close, Marianne, very close. Very close, not dear. It's linked to the story that we just read. Absolutely, I think Vijay, that was you. Only that it's not going to be this. It's going to be slightly different because this will then be a crocodile. So we're going to try and make a gharial. And this, you just need one of your hands because then you can use the torchlight with your other hand. Can I have all your hands up here, please? Fantastic. Now, all you have to do is make a tiny mountain with your little finger. Great. Make any, absolutely. Okay, everyone's doing it very well. Make another tiny mountain with your ring finger. Yeah, and then drop your index finger. And that's it. I know this looks absolutely simple, but I suggest you try it with the lights off and with the torchlight on. This looks fantastic and this looks beautiful. Another thing I think Vijay shared was this, a crocodile. This is something we've made as children. Another way to sort of make it interesting is this, because once this falls on the shadow, it looks like the big bad teeth of the crocodile. If you're trying to teach this to children who find this difficult, the most easiest way to make a crocodile is this. You can do this because when you do this in the shadow, this looks like your left arm looks like water. That's the most easiest way to do it. So I really hope some of you try it and send us photographs. So I learned this from an artist called Drew. I think we will share the link to his videos. He has numerous videos, hundreds of them. There was a time in the pandemic, he was posting one every day for children, adults, basically anyone. So please go ahead and try it. I think we've come to the end and we're somewhat on time. We're going to open up the floor for question and answers. Between ourselves, we can speak most of the South Indian language, I would say, and we can manage Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Gujarati, yeah? So if there are other regional languages you want to ask us questions in, please do ask. But if you are more comfortable typing the questions, please do so. I think we already have some of them.
Also, just to add that if you have a question that's specifically directed at Momita and Aplonia, they're here with us. And if you feel like you want to ask the question in English, Momita and Aplonia both are actually like they totally understand that they'll respond probably in Hindi, and we can do translations for whatever is needed. So Momita, Aplonia, also feel free to answer.
Okay, we'll first begin with the questions that you guys had entered while registering. So yeah, but before that, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Pragya. I am the communications officer at Dakshin. So yeah, we will begin. So we have a question from Aditya Kapoor. His question was, what role does the education system have in cultivating an ecological consciousness amongst people? Aditya, if you're in the audience and if you would like to add more to the question, or if you would have a follow-up question, you could again raise your hand, or you could also type in the chat box. So yeah, I will repeat the question. What role does the education system have in cultivating an ecological consciousness amongst people?
Do you want to direct it at anyone from the team?
It's your call, guys. Karishma, I don't know whoever wants to answer.
I guess as program head, maybe Naveen could step in on this one. Naveen, you're on
Sorry,
mute.
yeah, I realized I was on mute. Could someone flag the question again for me?
Yeah. So the question is, what role does the education system have in cultivating an ecological consciousness amongst people?
Oh yeah, good question. So, you know, in a way, there is a lot of content in the curriculum. Initially, it was because there was a lot of campaigning and all of that done by environmental groups to integrate a very strong environment component into the curriculum. The Supreme Court had issued an order saying it's mandatory to have environment education in all schools up to different grades. They had, and then there was also conversations about having a separate environment education as a separate subject of environment education and implementing it at scale. Say, the scale at which a country like India operates, where there are millions of schools, you would require training up further new teachers who could engage with that as a curriculum, and it requires like a lot of resources to be mobilized. So there was also an attempt to kind of integrate environment education across all existing subjects, because there's also this argument that it shouldn't be a standalone subject but something that should be integrated into all our learnings. So that's how an integrated model came about. But even then, there are challenges in implementing it, like Karishma and Arna were mentioning earlier. There's a lack of context which is very glaring, because a lot of the all of us live in certain systems, right? Certain ecosystems. It might be urban, it might be rural, it might be quite biologically rich and diverse, like in a place like the Andamans, where there's so much of endemic species that you don't find anywhere else in the world. The kids don't get an opportunity to learn about the kind of stuff that you would encounter in their backyards, but stuff that is entirely disconnected with their lived lives. So our attempt is to try and bring a context into it. But to answer your question, yes, there are lots of attempts happening at the central government and state government levels to kind of integrate environment education, but it requires a lot more work. We're on the track, but it requires a lot more thought and trials and integrations. Like I said, the scale we are dealing with in a country like India is huge, and so it requires a lot of, but the intent is there. It's just a matter of implementing learning and then fine tuning it further and further. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. So we have a question by Meera, and she's asking, marginalized communities are the first to be affected by global warming and climate change. Has education helped these communities in demanding their rights?
Shall I take this one?
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Meera, for that question. It actually it helps us to think of education in a very broad sense. So while I would say that whether environmental education has helped a community to demand their rights or not is difficult to say in any short term, and it has been a very short term in which marginalized communities are being made aware of what is happening in their immediate context, in their ecosystems, for us to say very decisively that yes, this education equals to better demanding of their rights. But at the same time, what I would really like to stress on is that the importance is not necessarily of only communicating those concepts which are related to the environment itself, because sometimes you have to even start with, like we are doing with literacy. Many of our marginalized community children, and marginalized in this sense is that they are on the fringes, on the geographical fringes of India, in spaces like the islands where climate change is very obvious, on livelihood and all sorts of things. So the first step is literacy. So the moment these kids and these groups of people are able to engage with information, they have a lot more ability to decide for themselves what actions are going to be good for them and their communities, and what may or may not be good for them and their communities. So it's too soon to say whether environmental education is directly responsible for getting people to demand their rights. But at the same time, we are on the road to literacy, which is on the road to critical literacy. So people can start asking questions and, like you say, demand rights in that sense. And then we'll be able to see whether there is a direct correlation to environmental education outcomes themselves. So Marianne, is there anything you want to add? Because I saw your video come on. And I
just to nod in agreement.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Karishma. In case people whose questions it is, they are in the audience and they would like to ask follow-up questions, they can raise their hands and they can also put it in the chat. So moving on to the next question, Astha has asked, what has your experience with environment education been, and what is the impact that you've seen? So maybe you could talk about the impact of our work so far. Aruna, would you want to take this one?
Karishma, maybe yours, since you've been through the
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that question? I was just doing a brief translation of my answer for Momita and Aplonia, but could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, basically, what has your experience been, and what is the impact that you've seen with environmental education?
Oh, okay. So this is going to be, I'm going to try and keep it short, but I'm like crystallizing 3 years of observations in this answer. So my experience has been that students are actually very, very interested in their place. We had a few great experiences getting students to map their village and have them ask questions about, and this was again all pre-pandemic, like the pandemic has changed the way in which we interact with kids. The digital divide in the Andamans, especially where most of my work has happened, is really huge. So the internet and mobile network coverage and all of that is extremely poor. So effectively, our students have almost entirely lost 2 years of being in touch with regular education in that sense.
I think we lost Karan. Okay, I think Karishma's internet is bad. Yeah, so we'll move on to the next question. I think Karishma, unless Aruna, you want to add something?
No, I'm good.
Maybe Karishma, maybe you want to type.
Before that, a very important observation for me, extremely. I type my answer in the chat. Does that work? And keep my video off. Hey, does this work?
Okay, keep your video off and try and answer.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So very quickly, the key observation is that they're extremely interested in their place. They're willing to come up with solutions to problems and implement them at behavior level. So that is one. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry, I lost track.
Basically, your experience and what is the impact that you've seen?
And the impact that we have seen is that students are becoming a lot more, they care a lot more for being present in education themselves. So one of my favorite memories of our classroom is that Momita, Aplonia and I came to class on Monday morning, and we saw the whiteboard, and so the classroom is quite easily accessible. It's not necessarily open all the time, but on the previous evening before the students had left, or actually like Friday evening before the students had left, someone had written the weekend days. So we have a slot on the classroom board that says like what is the day of the week. So someone had written Saturday, Sunday, holiday, and drawn a sad face on it and left. And then when we came back on Monday, we saw that this was on the board, and it was heartening to see that a student thought that the weekend without class was something that they would miss. And so that involvement and investment in coming back and being present and trying hard. So students who even struggle to read, trying really hard in the library and reading a book and then telling us what they read. That commitment to learning is the most significant change I have seen, that students are interested in doing things by their own self and for their own self. So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, Karishma. The next question is by Anu. She's asking, how do you motivate more people to educate themselves about our environment and the need of the hour? You know, like how can people educate themselves when it comes to the environment?
Alana, you want to take that?
Yeah. I think I would say that most people are aware of what is happening. And I think most people are conscious about the environment because end of the day, we occupy the space and we do want to keep our space clean. I think the issue comes in terms of capacity. How much do we have in our personal capacity to make sure that these things are sustainable? For instance, I don't know, I might really want to use a bamboo toothbrush and not a plastic toothbrush. But if you see, the gap is, one is 15 rupees and the other is 150 rupees, right? So I don't think, I sort of refuse to believe that there's a lot of ignorance. I'm sure we're all aware, and most people we work with are aware. I think the gap is just in access.
Okay, if I may ask a follow-up question after the activity we did today. So the story that we read about the Gharial, I have a storytelling related question. So when it comes to educating children, what are the kind of themes that you look at? What are the messages that you aim to, sort of drive and educate the children about?
I mean, we try not to keep it message oriented. Our primary aim is foundation literacy and numeracy. So if you saw the thing that we picked today, as the person reads, the word gets highlighted. So what we would do is we would put our finger as we are reading it out. So the child knows to associate the word with the pronunciation. So we're largely looking at using these texts to reach age and class appropriate reading and numeracy. The themes are largely place-based, like Karishma was saying, that is a methodology that we look at. We look at accessing our immediate environment. So our references are from things that we can immediately look at. In fact, I don't know if Subhadra is here. Subhadra is one of our interns. She is working on foundational learning material. So she's looking at there. Hi, Subhadra. So she has made this wonderful set of cards. It will soon be up on our website. So she's done an A to Z of all the creatures in Andaman Nicobar Islands. This is going to be for use in the Wandoor lab. So there are all animals, and then on the back side, there are 3 facts about the animals. So what we do is largely pick from themes that are immediately accessible for the child to go back home to and cross-refer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll quickly move on to the next question. So the question is by Shreya. What are the ways of bringing creativity into environmental education? Possibility of collaborations with the traditional languishing craftsman community in India to further environmental education.
I can take that. Shreya, so I have an arts background, so I completely understand what you're saying. So one of the ways that we can make it creative is that if you were able to have a look at today's lesson plan, it's largely creative, it's colorful, it's engaging, we have games and such. And yes, we do use a lot of craft forms. For example, we use a lot of puppets, shadow puppets, hand puppets. Today was hand shadow puppets and things like that. So I think these are some of the ways in which we do incorporate various ways of learning. What was the second half, Pragya, of the question?
The possibility of involving craftsmen.
We haven't yet gotten to that bit because, like how Karishma explained, we are not looking at any active collaborations at this point, given that it's the pandemic. But it is something that we have been thinking about and we have been working towards.
Okay, thank you, Aruna. We'll quickly just take 2 more questions, and then all the questions that are there in the chat box and all the questions that we are not able to answer, we will write back to you, and we will respond over email. So one of the questions is by Varshini Girish. She's asking if you could show some of your environmental education project syllabus that you've developed in the past, and what are you guys working on now?
So you can go to our website to have a look at some of them. Hopefully soon Treasure Islands will be available online. We have shared the links to some of the online material that we're using, and currently we are largely dependent on these online resources we have just shared with you because our work has moved to a WhatsApp medium. I think the one that Subhadra is working on, the picture cards, will also be up by the end of the month. So I suggest you come back early August to our website to the publishing section, Pragya, where we put up.
Yeah, we put up the link again as so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I guess, follow us on social media because we'll update our new stuff there.
Thank you, Karishma. Okay, so one last question. What are the challenges on field and what is the vision for the future of environment education? This is a question by Bhargav.
Karishma, do you want to?
And then I hope Naveen and you want to tie it up because this is a very large question. So personally, I would think that a major challenge in the way in which environmental education is approached formally is that everything is looked at as a grand problem to which no individual can have any solution. So almost what's the point? We can't do anything about these big problems. Oh, there's so much plastic in the oceans, forget about it. Know the problem, but feel almost helpless about the solution. And I think a main challenge and a possible solution is to really give people, not give, but have a more critically informing environmental education syllabus, curriculum, things that give people the power to take decisions for their locality. Of course, education is highly political. So the moment you say that people need to take charge of their communities and their localities, it is a question of whose interests and things like that. So this is a vast question, and I would love to have an extensive discussion about it. But my main struggle is that the idea of environmental education is to make people aware of the problems, and this makes people feel helpless. So that's my challenge.
Aruna, what do you think are the challenges that you face, and what do you think is the vision for environmental education right now?
I think one of the most recent and immediate issue that we're facing is that issues with internet and how, like Karishma and I have been talking to so many people. We've been trying to discuss with so many facilitators, and somehow everybody's response is let's create online material. But unfortunately for the children that we've been working with, just getting in touch with them online is been extremely difficult given the geographical realities of the space that we're facing in terms of there's either no power or there is really bad rains, there's no internet connection, things like that. So we're still trying to find ways around it. We're trying to engage with them at least a couple of times a week. that I would say is the immediate concern for us. In terms of what our vision is, we hope that all the children that we are working with attain class and age appropriate foundational literacy and numeracy, because they're really the most basic right of a child.
Thank you, Aruna. Naveen, would you like to
Yeah, just to add to what both, mostly what Karishma said is also that, one of the major challenges is that the communities that we engage with are also not a uniform, entity. And, including the children as well who come from those communities, is that they're extremely different social, cultural, economic backgrounds, especially in a place like the Andamans where most of the people are settler communities and moved in there. So you're dealing with a very, inherently kind of stratified communities as well. So talking about environment to to children, also there is a lot of sensitivity that needs to happen, because sometimes, as Karishma said, a lot of the information is like, defining the problems more and more to a level that, you feel you're completely powerless to change anything. But also the fact that some of it is also ethically quite, depending on context, which family these children come from and all, it could also be like ethically putting them in problematic in the way it's been, articulated, some of the environmental challenges. So it's really useful to, that's one of the challenges that we face, is how do you get these information, all this, and it's not like a lot of them do not understand or feel, or, it's just a matter of getting them to think about some of these issues and, put it into context. So in a way, I think a facilitative role is what, we probably would like to move towards, because it's not a lack of content that, environmental issues are not being mainstreamed and all of that, but it's actually a matter of placing it in your in your day-to-day lives. And also like these issues of, the minute it becomes very prescriptive and pointing hands at, hey, you are from an extractive community and all of that, you're already like, creating those stereotypes so breaking those stereotypes to make it a more ethical and inclusive conversation where no one feels, ashamed to engage with. So those are like some of the bigger challenges that we are facing with. And, this is something that is not specifically for environment education, but generally in the environmental space of conservation space, a big challenge that, one needs to grapple with. So it's more like an institutional challenge as well, and not just a thing that we are considering only for the environment education. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Naveen. Again, I would like to repeat myself that whatever questions we've not been able to answer, we will get back to you via email. So now, thank you everyone for attending. If you want to stay for the next session, please continue to stay. The link is the same only. Now we will have, thank you Karishma, thank you Aruna, and thank you Naveen for your wonderful session. So now our next session is—
Thanks to Momita and Aplonia if they're still here with us. I don't know if the internet held up. No, I think they had to drop off.
Yeah. They're here. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, they're still here. Great. It's a good day for internet and the Andamans, finally. That's good.